Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chant, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Sunday, April 17th, 2022. And we do this each evening as a result of a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I provide, you can go to weather.gov. Online there, you'll find a map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii in the lower left. And it's a point-and-click map you can go to and find out what's happening in other parts of the country. Right now, at least as of this afternoon, we have winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories for portions of the Dakotas, northwest Minnesota, as well as red flag warnings for high fire danger across western Nebraska into central Colorado, and frost freeze advisories and warnings for the Midwest there in the vicinity of Missouri and eastern Kansas, and then a couple of severe thunderstorm watches down there in Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and back towards south central Texas. So that's just a kind of a sampling of what you might find out by checking out that map. Well, we're going to be watching a storm-forced Aleutian low work its way from just north of the central Aleutian Islands across the eastern Aleutian Islands here tonight into early Monday. Northwest Canadian high continues to sit there, providing much of the mainland and the panhandle with quiet weather. We are now a day past full moon, the full pink moon of April, and so the moon phase now will be a waning gibbous moon, and we're continuing to see the growing daylight as the result of spring as we have that steady progress toward the summer solstice. There is an active sunspot group that is rotating into view now, not yet Earth directed, but it did produce an X-class solar flare earlier today. That's X-class is the strongest type of solar flare. So if that continues, that may increase the chances of enhanced auroras coming up here later in the week ahead and perhaps early into the following week. And keep in mind the aurora viewing season will be ending soon here in Alaska later this month into early May, as simply we're just getting too much daylight. And looking at current hazardous advisories, warnings across the state, and nothing going on in the north, the mainland pretty quiet. The only area of contention is the central Aleutians. A high wind warning has been issued. A high wind watch was upgraded to a high wind warning. And that's for 10 p.m. this Sunday evening through 1 p.m. early Monday afternoon. Northwesterly winds in the wake of this storm force low could be sustained on the order of 35 to 55 miles an hour with gusts of 65 to near 75 miles an hour, especially overnight and through the morning on Monday. Quick check of some FAA webcams. AKwx, hazy sunshine 2 above. Nome is seeing some cloud cover, a few flurries falling from that deck of overcast, a temperature at 30 degrees in the early afternoon. And then down there in the eastern Aleutians, Dutch Harbor, windy, getting some gust up around 35 knots and 36-degree temperature with light rain showers in the area. And then Wrangell in the southern half there of the Panhandle, enjoying partly sunny skies, 48 degrees. And it's not impossible as we go through this week. Warmer temperatures there in the southern Panhandle, well into the mid-upper 50s. A few spots could even flirt with 60 down around Ketchikan, Metlakatla. Well, here is that solar flare. Look there just to the on the left side of the sun. You'll see it erupting this earlier today. This active sunspot group will eventually rotate into view. It rotates from left to right. So if that becomes Earth directed and it pops off a flare or two, that'll give us a rising chance of geomagnetic storms with enhanced auroras as we go through, especially the latter half of this upcoming week and up until maybe the very last days of April. And as I mentioned, it's time to get out and enjoy maybe that last chance of really seeing the northern lights, and it looks like the sun may provide that opportunity because Utqiagvik at 71 degrees north latitude now has nearly 17 hours of daylight, gaining over 10.5 minutes per day now. Anchorage, 61 degrees north, is close to 15 hours of daylight and continue to gains over 5.5 minutes a day. And then finally in the southern panhandle, Ketchikan, 55 degrees north latitude. Daylight now is just 14 hours, nearly 20 minutes, and the change is almost 4.5 minutes of daylight each day. Well, on the satellite imagery, we can see that area of low pressure back toward Adak, the comma head there in the clouds as it swirls. We got a lot of clearing across the mainland, especially the central interior up through the Alaska Range, Yukon Valley, thanks to high pressure centered over northwest Canada. There's another weaker low southwest of Haida down in the North Pacific. And again, the main weather feature, though, the one that's that low that'll be cutting across just centered there on the north side of the Aleutian chain with an occluded front working eastward through the eastern Aleutians on up into the southern portion of the Alaska Peninsula. Low is down around 970 millibars this afternoon, and that feature will be heading toward the east-southeast across the eastern Aleutians in the pre-dawn hours of Monday morning. And in the wake of that, that's when those strong northwesterly winds could gust as high as 65 to 75 miles an hour across the central Aleutian chain. Some pretty gusty, though, winds ahead of that out of the southeast there up through the southern half of the Alaska Peninsula, and a few lighter showers up there too along areas of Kodiak Island and maybe the eastern Kenai. But much of the mainland enjoying quieter weather and relatively clear skies. By Monday afternoon, that low will be situated there right near Dutch Harbor at 980 millibars, and that occluded front will continue to just kind of weaken, and then by Tuesday afternoon the low will begin to slide off toward the southeast, just south there of the Alaska Peninsula, with a weak low riding up there just southwest of Haida Gwaii, with maybe a few light showers up into the far southern end of the Panhandle and along the British Columbia coast. Low temperatures Monday morning will be generally near or a bit below freezing in the Panhandle, obviously for areas south central interior, near freezing along the Gulf Coast, and temperatures should get back up into the 40s across many areas, even some 50s possible there in the southern half of the Panhandle. And then Tuesday morning lows 12 above Glen Ellen, one of the cooler readings there in the Copper River Basin. Otherwise generally above freezing where the clouds are in place southern half of the Panhandle, and temperatures creeping upward a bit from Kodiak Island down toward the Alaska Peninsula. And temperatures again Tuesday afternoon should generally be mid-upper 40s across the Panhandle, mid-40s around Anchorage, Talkeetna, McGrath, and maybe 48 there at King Salmon. Up across the far north, we'll still see some temperatures single digits above and below zero there along the Brooks Range, Arctic coast, east central areas along the Alcan border. 30-ish Emanak, as well as on up through Nome. Afternoon highs should get back up into the lower, even middle 40s along and south of the Yukon River, just north of the Alaska Range. Upper teens or so along the Arctic coast. And again, lows on Tuesday morning could be in the single digits above or below zero there, north slope and along the Arctic coast. Generally below freezing elsewhere. And then afternoon highs up along the Yukon River Valley, generally in the lower to mid 40s, maybe even upwards to 47, 48 there at Fairbanks. Southwest interior Monday morning could be a bit above freezing there up toward Bethel and Aniak along the southwest coast, Bristol Bay, as well as out over the Aleutian chain. Temperatures recovering into the 40s across much of the area, though a bit cooler as you get down beneath the cloud cover and precipitation from the southern half of the Alaska Peninsula, Cold Bay, False Bay, out through the areas of the Aleutian chain all the way out toward Adak and Atka. And then Tuesday morning we'll have lows a bit below freezing as we get up the Kuskokwim and Yukon River valleys, but near freezing along Bristol Bay and the southwest coast, and readings generally above freezing as we go out across the Alaska Peninsula and in through the Aleutians. And then temperatures Tuesday afternoon, we do anticipate to get back up into the mid, even some upper 40s, 48 there at King Salmon, maybe 47 at Bethel, 45 further up there toward, looks like Galena. And the extended temperature outlook, this is the Climate Prediction Center 6 to 10 day temperature outlook for April 23rd through the 27th. Temperatures are expected to average below normal across the north, central interior, southeast, and in through the Panhandle, whereas areas of the southwest centered on Bethel, Dillingham, may average a bit above normal. It looks like this pattern, which we've kind of seen here for the past week, will continue. As far as precipitation is expected to average below normal across much of the north and west. So basically from the Arctic coast down through the central Yukon Valley in through the southwest interior, and precipitation may be just slightly above normal in parts of the Panhandle and maybe along the Alcan border in the vicinity of Eagle and Northway.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, let's take a look now at the flying weather. And if you do have a flight planned either Monday to Tuesday, again, the main weather feature will be an area of low pressure working its way across the eastern Aleutians and then passing just south of the tip of the Alaska Peninsula on the North Pacific side. There's also an area of weak low pressure that will be located south and southwest of Haida Gwaii, but otherwise the main weather feature affecting much of the mainland is high pressure that's centered over northwest Canada, and that will continue to allow widespread VFR conditions across much of the mainland into the Panhandle. But broad IFR conditions are expected in through the Bering, including St. Matthews, St. Paul, down through the eastern Aleutians and there the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. That area may shrink back a little bit Monday afternoon, but still you can see that band of IFR extending from the central Bering down across St. Matthew, St. Paul into the eastern Aleutians on up into the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. Widespread, though, VFR conditions across much of the mainland, northwest Canada, and into the Panhandle. Tuesday morning, we could see IFR again from around the Russian coast, areas of St. Lawrence Island down through the central Bering, and especially on the North Pacific side there of the Alaska Peninsula. And into Tuesday afternoon, widespread VFR conditions across much of the mainland and again the Panhandle, and still a band of IFR conditions in the central Bering down into the tip of the Alaska Peninsula, as well as in the far western Aleutians. So past conditions on Monday, Anaktuvuk Pass there coming through the Brooks Range, VFR, as will Adigan Pass. Further south and west, Lake Clark and Merrill. We'll have a little moisture around, so start out MVFR in the morning, giving way to VFR conditions. Same thing at Rainy Pass, MVFR giving way to VFR conditions. And then as we round out through the central and eastern Alaska range, VFR conditions are expected to dominate there at Windy Pass, Isabel, as well as Mentasta passes. And then coming down across the Copper River Basin, VFR is expected there at Tanita Pass. And then a little further south toward the Gulf Coast, Portage Pass, VFR conditions on Monday. And going eastward in through the Panhandle, generally VFR conditions are expected, including there in the north at Chilkoot and White. Well, the surface freezing line Monday morning will run along the outer Panhandle coast from around Craig on up to Sitka, in through the northern Gulf, and then back down across Kodiak Island and the southwest up to about the lower Kuskokwim Delta, back through the central Bering, with a little bump in the aloft freezing levels to 2,000 feet there, the southern Panhandle, as well as up into the eastern Aleutians. The greatest threat for icing will be associated with that low working its way across the eastern Aleutians and into the North Pacific between 4,000 and 16,000 feet, between 3,000 and 12,000 feet north of the eastern Aleutians through the lower Bering, and then finally between 2,000 and 8,000 feet around St. Matthew on up toward the Russian coast. And also an area out there near and south and southwest of Haida Gwaii between 4,000 and 14,000 feet associated with that weaker area of low pressure. Winds aloft at 30,000 feet jet stream level. The most dominant strong core upper level winds is in the lower left corner of your screen, 140 knot west-northwest wind max there that is southwest of the western Aleutians. And then bringing it down to 9,000 feet, we have a clearly well-defined low-pressure circulation there at the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. Ahead of it, 50 to 65 knot winds coming there up from the southeast across the Alaska Peninsula, broadening out to 45 knots up toward St. Matthew and northwest there, Nunavik Island. On the backside, 55 to 70 knot winds coming through the central Aleutians. And then finally, when we bring it down to 3,000 feet, we see that low pressure circulation there very clearly along the eastern Aleutians vicinity of Dutch Harbor. Ahead of it, we expect a broad belt of 50 to 65 knot winds just off the southwest coast, and then on the backside of it, northwesterly winds 60 to 65 knots there in through the central and pushing into the eastern Aleutians. And this will translate to certainly the potential for isolated severe turbulence across much of the central into the eastern Aleutian chain and on up into the southern half of the Alaska Peninsula, anywhere between the surface and 3,000 feet there in the central Aleutians, to surface and 4,000 feet extending along the Alaska Peninsula on up in through the southwest coast and southwest interior, including the far western arm there of the Alaska Range, Lake Iliamna, westward back toward the lower Kuskokwim Delta. So if you do have a flight planned here early in the week, I hope you're able to get out and have a safe one.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us here today is Eric Stevens from the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, GINA for short. And Eric, you frequently come on the show to tell us about these really cool things that we're doing with satellites over Alaska and how we can use these really awesome tools. But I'm thinking all the while there has to be a mad scientist somewhere working on the next cool thing in the satellite laboratory. What is being developed today?
Right. Well, you know, when I was a kid growing up in the boonies in North Dakota there, on Sunday after church, the old people, like my parents and their parents, would gather and have coffee and talk. And I kind of eavesdropped on them a little bit. And the theme of a lot of these conversations seemed to be, well, isn't it amazing what they can do these days, someone would say.
Sure.
And I was thinking, well, I don't know, I was too young.
Right.
Well, now I'm old enough in the weather satellite business.
You can remember when.
The new generation of weather satellites, I'm starting to say, isn't it amazing what they can do these days? Because it's always improving.
Yes.
Maybe an analogy here is like television. Television started in black and white, then it went to color. Analog signal transitioned to digital here a number of years ago. Standard definition becomes high definition. Right. Well, weather satellites are changing too. First weather satellites went up around 1960, not that long ago. No. It's comparatively young science. And every time a new series of satellites is launched, we learn from the past, so the mad scientists decide, well, we could make the next satellite even better in such and such a respect.
Yes.
And now the United States is on the verge of launching, or in progress of launching, a series of new geostationary satellites that are better than ever before.
Okay.
Let's take a look at some of the previews of what these new satellites can do.
Peek inside the lab here, okay.
Yeah, and so we'll peek in, and here are some mad scientists and mad technicians dressed in bunny suits. This is, believe it or not, this is the business end of a weather satellite under construction in a clean room. You don't want a speck of dust on the lens of a weather satellite's camera. So this is done in a clean environment. They are building a geostationary satellite there.
Oh, cool.
This new generation of satellites, if you had to answer the question, why are these better? Why do we care?
Okay.
You could answer it with 3 words: faster, better, more. The new generation of satellites are faster than the older ones. The images are sharper, they're better, and there's more spectral channels. We'll talk about that.
Any one of these called Steve Austin? It sounds faster, better, stronger.
Yeah. You know what, though? These things cost more than $6 million.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They're pricey, but they are an essential tool for the Weather Service to fulfill its mission of protecting lives and property.
Exactly.
You got to have the tool to do the job, and it helps all of us when we get the accurate forecast, the warning in time, and this is the tool. Faster. On left here, we see what the old generation of satellites could scan in 5 minutes. On the right, that's what you get in 5 minutes, the whole planet, or at least one side of it. So it's faster. That means you can take more images over a given amount of time and make smoother movie loops out of that. Because animating movie loops really helps you highlight a feature that maybe you can't see as well in a single image.
Absolutely does, yep.
Let's zoom into a small piece of real estate like Texas.
Sure.
And we can see here a satellite that has a 1-minute movie loop visible light. You can see thunderstorms boiling there.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, the rippling of the top of the thunderstorm. This is a fun movie loop. We're going to be able to see things like this more and more often because of the new satellites being generated. Some things are only evident in animation. So that's faster. Well, what's better? We're able to now have sharper imagery than before. The Japanese have a satellite that uses the same imager that is on the new generation of satellites that America is launching too. An imager, that's just a word for camera. It's the camera on a weather satellite. We have something called the Advanced Baseline Imager.
Sounds important.
ABI. It's important enough it has an acronym. Everything's an acronym. Well, an ABI-like instrument is here over the Western Pacific, and we can see this color image. This is what a human eye might see if you were riding on the satellite. But it's a little bit fuzzy. With new technology, you can post-process the image taken by the satellite to highlight and sharpen some of the features. So this image here of the Western Pacific then becomes this image. Thanks to the processing techniques, yes, this is the newest technology. So we've got a new satellite that can provide better data than ever before. And on the ground, we can process it better than before as well to really sharpen up the imagery and to give us a better view of the weather than ever before. So faster and better and more. What do we mean by more? Well, on the older generation of satellites, the imager, the camera, had 5 slices of the spectral pie, visible imagery, infrared imagery, something we can't see from the human eye. A lot of different slices of the pie. We're going from 5. The new imager has 16 slices. Each slice has its own relevance. Some are best for volcanic ash, for smoke, for dust, for telling the difference between smoke and dust, which can look similar under some infrared channels, but other ones bring out certain things. All of these 16 bands are important. In fact, some of the mad scientists, they didn't want 16, they wanted 24. There's always more you can do. But that'll be the next generation of satellites. So now we say, isn't it amazing what we can do these days? And you know what? It makes you think, well, what's the future going to be like too? It's so important to be able to know what's going on now in the weather. If you're going to forecast the future, you got to know where things are now. And satellites are the way to see that, especially in Alaska, where we don't have as many observations down on the ground. The satellites fill in the holes.
Yeah, really important stuff. And I love hearing about what we can see right now, but I love thinking about what is possible in the future. It's amazing stuff. And since you paid for it, it's a good time to learn about it. If you'd like, check out the website at www.goes-r.gov. And as I understand, it's a really easy website to use.
Oh yeah, a lot of good information about what these new satellites mean to Americans. And it's the Weather Service's mission to protect lives and property, and this is the tool how to do it.
Cool stuff, Eric. Thanks so much for sharing that with us today, and thank you for joining us right here in Alaska Weather Facts. We'll see you next time. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and checking the sea ice edge first across just off the southwest coast and through the eastern portion of the Bering Sea. We notice the ice has opened up a lot there around and north of Nunavik Island off the southwest coast. And it's finally lifting again and retreating north of St. Paul. We expect the ice, though, to drift a bit westward. We're going to see stronger winds out of the east, especially on Monday, and that will cause the ice to have a westward drift for a time. Looking at the Arctic coast, ice in place up there along the far north, but we do have some polynyas opening up near and southwest of AKwx to Wainwright, and then off of north there of Cape Lisburne, as well as just west of Kotzebue Sound, and in and around Norton Sound and areas surrounding St. Lawrence Island. The winds, though, for Monday for the southeast panhandle, as high as 30 knots there through Lynn Canal, with 6-7 foot waves, 20 to 25 knot winds Petersburg down through Ketchikan, Metlakatla, waves 4 to 5 feet. Offshore flow there for the open waters of the Gulf, 15 to 20 knots, waves generally 6 to 9 feet, though could be as high as 10 feet down off of Craig. And then on Tuesday, we'll continue to see north winds through Lynn Canal, rather brisk with waves of 6 to 7 feet, and then a mix of winds 20 knots northerly Petersburg, but southeasterly there Ketchikan and Metlakatla with waves 3 to 4 feet. And offshore generally easterly flow 15 to 20 knots there through the open waters of the Gulf with waves of 6 to 7 feet. Along the northwest Gulf Coast, winds will be northerly Prince William Sound, couple foot waves, northeast winds 10 to 15 knots through the upper and middle Cook Inlet, and then the east entrance, or the entrance of Cook Inlet, we expect 25 knot winds from the east and waves of 6 to 7 feet. On Tuesday, winds will continue out of the east there at the entrance of Cook Inlet and just north east there of Kodiak, easterly winds of 20 to 25 knots, waves 6-7 feet. Northeasterly winds through middle and upper Cook Inlet around 15 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet, and generally north winds through Prince William Sound and waves there around 2 feet. In the vicinity of Kodiak Island on Monday, Easterly winds 25 knots, but they will increase going down the length of the Alaska Peninsula to 40 and 45 knot gales, strongest south of Sand Point, where waves could build over 10 feet. And then on Tuesday, still easterly winds across Kodiak Island around 25 knots, and we'll continue to see easterly 35 knot gales, middle and lower Alaska Peninsula, with waves 15 to near 20 feet on the North Pacific side, and as much as 11 feet north of Cold Bay on the Bering side. The real wind action will be, though, associated with that stronger low working its way through the central and eastern Aleutians. On Monday, we expect storm force northwest to west winds 50 knots with gusts up around 65 knots there south of Nikolsky. And then as we go into Tuesday, we'll see a continuation, at least through the eastern Aleutians, of 45 to 50 knot storm force winds out of the northwest to west. They will turn around more southwesterly, trailing off from 40 to 30 knots, especially as you get west of Adak. Highest waves will be on the North Pacific side, south of Nikolsky and Dutch Harbor, where they could be running in excess of 20 feet. Along the southwest coast, the ice that has broken up will continue to drift westward with winds out of the east, 35 to 40 knot gales, especially there from south of Hooper Bay, south of Nunavik Island. And by Tuesday, winds will come down a bit to around 20, 25 knots in most cases, though 30 knots easterly there out of the vicinity of the Yukon, I should say the Kuskokwim Delta. And waves could be as high as 14 feet in the vicinity of St. Paul and George. Now, up along the Arctic coast, winds will be out of the east, generally around 10, maybe 15 knots. And continuing down there into the lower Chukchi Sea, easterly winds out of Kotzebue Sound, and picking up to 25 knots there on the west side of the Seward Peninsula and north of St. Lawrence Island. Tuesday, we expect winds to still continue to have an east to northeast component around 10 to 15 knots along the length of the Arctic coast down through the lower Chukchi Sea, and picking up a bit to 20 knots out of the northeast on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. Quick check of the low pressure, 977 millibar low on the north side of the central Aleutians overnight tonight, working its way in the eastern Aleutians to near Dutch Harbor Monday afternoon. Strongest winds on the backside of the low, and that low will weaken as it works its way southeastward into the North Pacific by Tuesday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.